It's time for the unofficial 40. Soonerscoop.com's very official recruiting podcast featuring Soonerscoop.com recruiting publisher Josh McCuistion. Get your recruiting fix from the leader in Sooner recruiting. It's the unofficial 40 with your hosts, Soonerscoop.com publishers Carey Murdoch and Josh McCuistion. Eddie Radis.
Oh my God, we are back, and we have first, ladies and gentlemen, it's the first time that this has ever happened in the history of the pod. I mean, we've been podcasting for over a year now. This is the first time, I believe, that we have the one and only Josh McCuistion in studio, and he's on a microphone over there.
That has to be the best build-up to the least exciting bit of news ever.
Yeah, you have so much energy right now that you're in studio, Josh. It's unbelievable.
I know. I need to scream something as quickly as possible.
Eddie Radosevich and his gloriousness, just returning from the St. Jude Sam Bradford Golf Classic, apparently.
It's just a hat.
Actually, is that the only hat that you're wearing now? Is that from this year's tournament?
Yeah, it's been thrown in the rotation. We've started training camp, though, so we're in football mode now.
What did you wear in the golf tournament? That?
A visor.
You went
I don't
visor?
wear hats playing golf.
I'm just trying to figure out why that is.
Why?
My wheels are spinning, and I'm trying to figure out, like, why.
Because I'm not poor.
My God.
Coming out strong.
Rethink that raise I promised you. So anyway, a lot of stuff going on. We just, like I mentioned, we talked to the coaches, which the Bob Stoops golf tournament is what it was always kind of referred to. Now it's the Lincoln Riley golf tournament, but Lincoln Riley did not play in the Lincoln Riley Sooner Appreciation Day golf journey event, whatever it's called now. It's a first.
Yeah,
just like Josh being in studio, the head football coach not playing in his own golf tournament. That's a first.
He got back in the film room. Everybody on the board should be happy.
Is he not a golfer?
I think he is. I just don't think he played.
I think Mike Stoops golfs, but he didn't play. It would have been awesome if Tim Kish had been the only one that played.
Yeah, that would have been awesome.
So is this like a referendum? Like no coaches are golfing today? Or
I don't know.
Did it just work out that way?
I think it might have just worked out that way. I also, I thought about tweeting it, but I didn't want to anger anybody. But if the Lincoln Riley era is off to a rousing start, if we're having golf tournaments at noon during the middle of the summer,
I think you're trying to kill people.
Decision making may be a problem in Norman.
What was it? There was something else that I questioned. Oh yeah, when I saw Phil Steele tweet out, thanks to Lincoln Riley for spending an hour with me previewing his OU football team, and I thought, dude, your magazine's already out. Like, Lincoln, why are you wasting time with that dork?
Why is he...
With the gambling addict.
What's he gonna... Yeah, that's probably just inside information that he's trying to...
He's just... You're helping him build his Vegas service. His tout service.
Does he do one of those?
I bet he... I mean, I wouldn't think so. But we all know that's a gambling guide. I mean...
Yeah. No, it is.
That dude knows where some bodies are buried. I probably shouldn't make fun of.
It's funny. I buy it every year, Phil Steele.
Do too.
Most overrated magazine ever, though.
It's just that it's almost like it's too much stats. There's too much stuff to parse through. You can't get through all of it in time to actually learn anything.
It's ugly, too.
Well, and
the ugliest. It looks like somebody puked the impact font all over a page for about 400 pages.
They put it out so early, too, that usually half the guys are... from some places are either hurt or not playing, or there's a lot of stuff that can change.
Well, like a few years ago, I remember, I think pretty prominently, he mentioned Joe Mixon. He discussed, like, they feel like this freshman running back could have a huge impact, and he knew nothing about what, and it wasn't his fault.
Because it came out so early, he punched her before or after it published. So anyway, yeah, I question that decision-making a lot. So, yeah, there you go, Lincoln Riley. You're already on notice by the Unofficial 40 podcast. We question your judgment.
Judgment problems in Norman already. There hasn't even been a 4th and 1 yet.
I was told by some people that, well, I guess I'll just say it. I was told by Mike Houck that he's kind of started paring down his meat. Like he's not okaying as many media requests as he was. So he's definitely getting into game mode.
Well, at some point he has to get burnt out. I mean, he was doing almost, it felt like 3 a day, and he was doing it with stations I'd never even heard of.
Yeah. I requested him for the podcast, but I was shot down.
He'll just need some
because
time.
Apparently there are so many podcasts out there now that they all request, like, they don't want to open up that Pandora's box. Or if he starts going on our, which I say, you know what, tell those people to F off. We're the real podcast around here.
Yeah, I mean, if you're credentialed, you should be able to get them on.
Well, maybe we could start with like a protocol of if Lincoln Riley actually can recognize you, then maybe he can go on your podcast. But if he's never laid eyes on you, go the hell home and don't request.
Well, this is what hurts, because normally I just say, hey, Bob, jump on the podcast with us. Well, okay, what time? But I got to build that with Lincoln now, so screwed.
Just need a couple minutes with him. We'll get him on.
So big thing coming up, barbecue, and we wanted to kind of have we're saying this, it's actually laziness, but we're masking it by saying that we wanted to have the latest information available for the barbecue, so that's why we're doing the podcast on Friday. But coming up, it's been kind of an interesting week, Josh, because of another Josh. Josh Proctor goes up to Ohio State, tweets out yesterday, I don't know if you have the tweet in front of you, that he is shutting down his recruiting, or whatever, recruitment. Did he use recruitment? And that he thinks everyone, and I saw a bunch of guys, Ron Tatum, basically supporting him, saying, hey, we're with you, you do you, or whatever.
Yeah.
But my first thought is, looks like Urban Meyer put the screws to him.
Well, you had him and Jaden Woodby this week kind of come out and say, oh, I'm 100%, I'm all Buckeye, this kind of thing. Well, and the Scoop talked about it a little bit. It's, for those who don't know, it's already out this morning, for those who are listening to this later in the day. But, to me, if you're having to put stuff like that out, wasn't that what your commitment was? I mean, wasn't that shutting it down once already? Like, you don't have to do this if you weren't already allowing that to happen again. And I think, especially with Josh, you saw it happen. He can't go to Columbus all the time. He's got all that time in between. And for me, I think it just came down to, well, it's, Oklahoma's right down the road. I can go check them out anytime I want. Guys like Pat Fields, who he trains with a lot. There's a lot of, Jordan Kelly is a guy that he knows as well at Union. So there's a lot of connections between him and OU. And there's really none between him and Ohio State, and probably the last time he'll get to go there is for whatever his official visit's going to be. Well, that's, between now and I believe he's going to be a midterm guy, so he's got till December. That's a lot of time for Oklahoma to kind of continue to keep that door open. To me, I'll still be surprised if he doesn't take an official visit to OU. I still think he'll end up at Ohio State, but I think anyone thinking this story is just done is probably wrong.
The biggest surprise on the board, obviously, was just the people that were saying, oh, you should drop him now. And that could be the dumbest thing I've ever heard. That
would be like saying, I mean, you had a guy in CeeDee Lamb who decommitted. Like, that's when you should, as a fan, you should be allowed to say, oh, I don't want him anymore anyway. But the staff, I mean, Dennis Simmons talked about this the other day, that basically he's like, kids in 9th grade now want an offer and they want to commit. And he's like, I don't even know if I'll be here when that kid finally goes to college.
I loved that.
Yeah.
I loved how honest that was. That because it's real. Like, every coach can put that image out that we're going to be here for you. They don't know. There's no way to control that. Dennis Simmons gets the offered an offensive coordinator job at some big, program. Of course he's going to take that job.
Yeah.
He'd be crazy not to.
But that's what he was talking about with Sedarian Lamb. He was like, look, I told the kid, you need to be sure. You need to be 100%. You need to look around. But I still think that we're going to be the place for you when it's all said and done. Now, and we talked about this when it happened last year. I remember, in the past, OU had a staff that would get butthurt over something like that and end up saying something, that would end up making it impossible for the kid to continue looking at OU.
Well, absolutely. And, there was a story this week on the board. Somebody brought up Jalen Reagor was doing some sort of, question and answer on Twitter or Instagram or something.
I think it was Snapchat with even creepier.
Yeah. And somebody asked him, what, excuse me, kind of asked him, what is it what was it about your situation that made you drop OU? And he said, oh, it was something personal. Well, I've talked to enough people. I don't think there was like a smoking gun on the situation, but I definitely think, based on what I was told and some of the people I talked to, that the reaction to his initial interest in TCU when he took that first official visit, I think there was such a soreness over the way that went down that it pissed some people off, and I think there was probably a pretty strong reaction to it, kind of like what you're talking about, Carey, kind of that old school mentality. And I think from that point on, Rager and OU was just, it wasn't going to happen, no matter how much OU tried to kind of get back in there and make it happen. I think they'd pissed him off, and that was it. So I think people looking for like some storyline of, you know, some awful moment between him and OU, it wasn't that. It was just they didn't like him going to TCU and the way he handled everything. And I think Simmons is a better example of what recruiting is these days. You're going to have to accept that guys that are committed are going to take visits, going to look around. Hell, Levi Draper, that dude was locked into OU last year. I know for months he was still talking to schools like Georgia and Notre Dame and Alabama and still having conversations with those guys in case something happened. And that's just what these kids are doing now. And the schools that can learn to roll with that, they're the ones that recruit the best.
I think the schools that I think every once in a while you need kind of an FU kid. Like if he decommits, you got to set a line at some point.
Yeah.
You can't let every kid walk over you. But I think that the really good schools know exactly who that kid's going to be, you know?
Yeah, well, you know, like Ron Tatum, if Ron Tatum's not immensely talented and at a position that OU has a huge need,
right,
they tell him to walk.
Right.
I mean,
because they were really frustrated.
Yeah.
That was a kind of a crisis moment.
That stung. I mean, there's no question about it. And, you know, I think it's why that commitment was so big for them to turn that kind of around. But, yeah, I mean, if he wasn't, like I said, a tremendously talented guy, tell him to walk. You can find another dude. You just don't find guys with Tatum's physical abilities every day, especially within state lines. You've got to keep those guys.
I mean, going back to Proctor, it's such a difficult balance because, I mean, look at Cameron Rising. Here's what I'm thinking. I had a brain fire. I mean, like, you know, OU, like, something's going on. Like, we don't want to say anything, but we know something's going on. And like, I don't know. I look at it both ways. Like Urban Meyer, okay, you put the screws to the kids, but now you're going to be operating in the dark a little bit. Mm-hmm. If Josh Proctor had just gone to the barbecue, and I'm sure that's what that was about.
Yeah, of course.
He did not want him coming to this barbecue.
Yep,
this
I
weekend.
think that's 100%.
If he goes to the barbecue, yeah, I mean it hurts you in your recruiting, but at the same time, now you put the screws to the kid. So now, if he talks to OU in the future, he's not going to want you to know about it.
Yeah,
and you're gonna be recruiting against something that you really don't know where you stand at times.
That's a great point, and I think also when you look at it from the perspective of Ohio State's a real. You know, we just talked about you've got to be real about these sort of things, and guys are going to take visits. Well, depending on how hard that staff pushed Josh Proctor and Jaden Woodby last weekend. Well, what happens when other kids in that class, you know, they know they're locked in, they know they're in a good spot, and they're like, well, I'm going to go visit Alabama or I'm going to go visit Notre Dame. Well, Josh and Jaden are going to be like, well, why the hell can't we go see, you know, these schools? And I mean, that's why it's dangerous to push it too hard. And maybe Ohio State didn't. I mean, you can't fault that staff for recruiting. They know their way around things. Yeah. So I'm sure they played it smartly. But if anybody thinks, oh, you just go out there and tell these kids how it's going to be, that is going to screw you 9 times out of 10. You're not going to win in recruiting like that. That's just not how you play ball.
And back to like last year is like you've seen kids support Proctor probably like you would want them to. Your recruits, your commits, because they're reaching out and they're saying, hey, you know, you're still my brother or whatever. Mm-hmm. And recruits did that last year with Rambo and even Rager. I don't care. He signed somewhere else. So.
Jalen not going to play at TCU this year.
But, I mean, I think that's probably a good sign for this recruiting class, too, is the kids are doing the same thing they did last year that resulted, you know, in a lot of kids either coming back or OU being able to keep in touch with those kids.
Yeah, you're not seeing pettiness or any kind of, you know, there's definitely a feeling. And, you know, you still look around and Oklahoma's going to do really, really well in state. I mean, with the exception of Proctor, if he does stick with Ohio State, which, like I said, I expect him to do, you're still talking about landing, with one exception, every player in the state that you saw it. I mean, that's That's really good, and it's guys like Ron Tatum, Pat Fields, Bray Walker. I mean, Ron Tatum and Bray Walker. It's not every year that the state of Oklahoma produces a potential NFL offensive lineman and defensive lineman, and Oklahoma's got both of them.
Now, is Proctor going to make his official visit to Ohio State when they play OU?
I don't know. I don't. He.
I would think that they would want him to.
I would think so too, because I think we all kind of have a feeling on how that game might go. So I think that'll be something they'll want to do. But at the same time, there's a risk because that game doesn't go the way you think it does. Well, then you've opened up the door, and he was right there to see it. And
then if OU somehow wins that game, Lincoln Riley's going to be all over him.
Oh yeah.
Mike Stoops will be all over.
A little bit loosely connected to kind of how Marvin Wilson was.
Yeah. Exactly with the Houston game last year.
Though.
Yeah, when it went badly for OU. I mean, that's Carey, like you talked about Lincoln. I mean, that's the thing that is clear. And I know you've had conversations with people too. He's a guy they really want. Make no mistake about it. Josh Proctor is a player they really, really want to have in this class. And that's why I said, he can say this, and I think maybe for a few weeks or maybe even a month he'll really stick to it. But at some point, there was a reason you started looking again. I don't think that reason just went away because you spent 2 days in Columbus. So, I think there's still something going on. We'll see what happens. But if you made me bet, I bet he still takes an official to Oklahoma.
If I'm Kerry Cooks, I'm sending him a direct message or link or whatever to the Marcus Hooker commitment.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm saying they're still they're still recruiting over you, Josh. What do you think about that?
Well, and I mean, you look.
I'd be a ruthless coach.
Oh yeah. No,
I don't think that's ruthless. That's just fair game.
I'd also Venmo him like $500 as well, though.
So Eddie went from ruthless to just flat out illegal.
Eddie's not going to be.
I'd be very Hugh Freeze minus all the religious.
So hookers and blow and bagmen
and the most beautiful SEC city of Oxford.
But you know what you can respect about Eddie? Eddie wouldn't try to hide it. You know what? We're getting hookers for all our players.
Yeah.
Like Eddie would advertise it.
As God intended.
BFJ.
The leader of the movement.
Okay, so we spent a lot of time on Josh Proctor. Let's hit up the barbecue. Just Scoop is out. I was trying something new. I don't know if this is going to work or not, but Scoop is out. Yeah, it's pay. We got to make some money somehow, folks. So subscribe to the site. It's worth it. I guarantee it's worth it. Scoop today, proof of that. But barbecue coming up. It's the second year of it. I do know it's going to be indoors. I've mentioned that before. I don't know that they'll have a bunch of activities on the field or not. Is there going to be a pie eating contest? I don't know these things. Maybe Josh is right. Well, we'll find. There'll be all kinds of social media coming out of this thing.
Yeah.
So give us an update on kind of the big names. Have there been anybody? I mean, obviously Josh Proctor has dropped out. Any other late dismissals or additions?
The two big ads both came kind of late yesterday evening, really kind of late into the night. Daniel Carson, the defensive end offer from Missouri, big guy, about 6'5", 270. He has confirmed he'll be coming in. I think there was some question for a while of where he really fit into to Oklahoma's plans. They have Bobby Brown, they have Ronnie Perkins, they've already got Tatum committed. But I think it's just a situation where Oklahoma sees him in a fairly similar light to Perkins and Brown and says, well, if he wants to come, then we'll take him and we'll be fine with that. So you've got him coming in, and the other is a 2019 guy, which is going to be on the all-name team for 2019, Nana Asofa-Mensah, who's a big-time kind of, outside linebacker out of Nolan Catholic in Fort Worth. He's already been up to OU once. He came up, I believe, for maybe either the spring game or one of the junior days. I'm blanking a little bit on that.
Okay, phonetically, it's not so bad. Nana Asofa-Mensah.
Yeah.
That's not too
bad. It's hyphenated, so it's not the Asofa-Mensah. There is a hyphen there in the middle, so it's not quite as daunting as it sounds. But no, he is a elite guy. OU offered him, I want to say, about 6 weeks ago. Kind of long, 6'5", 220, could be he's kind of what OU's looking for right now. He's got that ability. He could grow into a defensive end in a 4-3. He could stand up in a 3-4. He can do a lot of stuff, but he's a pure edge rusher and got offers from really everywhere over the spring and summer. So he's a big-time guy to get on campus. And, there's a nice mix of 2018, 2019, and we've only got one 2020 guy on the list, and that's Jason McClellan from Aledo, the running back that they've already offered. I think there will be more. It's just sometimes, some years, I feel like I'm real locked into the list, and then sometimes it's a little trickier. So this year, I feel like there's probably 5 or 6 quality guys that maybe I haven't been able to nail down yet.
I am going to make a statement here. I don't think that Tom Herman nor Matt Rhule should be able to recruit Nana Asofa-Mensah because I'm going to bet that he is not Catholic, and yet he's going to a Catholic high school.
He doesn't believe in his community.
No.
Yeah, that's awful. No. Yeah, God, that whole thing was, and I love.
It's just trying to placate high school coaches.
Oh yeah. Oh, they're playing to Texas high school because there's nowhere where that fervor of hatred towards IMG is stronger than in Texas. I mean, it is fanatical, and they are right there. And the funniest thing I saw the whole time was when it was that coach at the Texas high school coaches clinic kind of quoted Herman about what he had to say about IMG. Kids don't have to go there to be recruited. We don't seek them out, whatever. And the Ayodele Adeye kid quotes it and puts like a question mark because he transferred to IMG about 2 months ago.
Yeah.
So
he's committed to Texas.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just you're like, man.
I'm going to say this, and I don't think we have any allegiances. I don't care. The whole IMG thing is stupid.
Yeah.
Like, it is just stupid. Like, to think that you need to go somewhere and play with other ridiculously good, like, that's somehow going to make you better as a player? No. You're playing in high school. The level that you're going to be playing at, you're not, it's just, I think it's stupid.
It's stupid.
I thought the primetime thing was stupid. The Deion Sanders thing was
really
stupid.
dumb.
Yep.
At least IMG has some legs on it.
Football, yeah, I mean.
It is IMG.
Here's the other thing. It started out as a tennis place.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's really
the richest thing to come out of that Texas high school coaches thing was some of the quotes from some of the coaches that I would say the schools are fairly known for recruiting and getting guys to transfer over.
Yeah.
And then they talk about transferring out like it's some kind of big community deal.
It's funny how that works.
There might not be a bigger collection of bigger egos than the Texas High School Football Coaches
Association. No question. As a collection.
In one building?
Yep.
My God.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing, it's I don't know how I feel about what Matt Rhule said because there's two sides to the argument. I love that he had the balls to be like, what, we're not even messing with it. Like, Herman hedged it. Like, he went about
and then he
halfway.
backed up on it the next day.
Kid
What a
from there
pussy.
committed. I mean,
God.
Well, and
Matt Rhule, if he had a kid committed, I guarantee you he would have a different stance.
Yes, absolutely.
Herman tried the misquote crap. Like, he told the Adeye kid that, like, they just misquoted me. They misunderstood. And I'm like, okay, I'd love to hear that coach's take on what he actually quoted and what was said. But Carey, you kind of hit on the Rhule part that is funny. Like, yeah, that's great that you took that stand. It's also unrealistic because Baylor isn't going to IMG and winning real guys. Like, they might go in and get the second flight, maybe steal some guy, but there's not, like, Baylor might get one guy every 7 years at IMG. He's not really doing anything with that statement.
Yeah, he's playing the percentages. It helps him more to say that than it hurts him because he's going to get more Texas high school coaches on his side and be sympathetic to him and maybe be more open, to him through their doors. Maybe he gets a 5-minute bump in, with a kid here and there, and nobody bats an eye or something.
Well, and the Wetzel guy that he hired from S.A. Reagan was the former Texas high school coaches president, and was the guy that wrote the letter about Bishop Gorman after they played Cedar Hill and kind of beat the doors off Cedar Hill last year. Which still surprised me. That game didn't and it's funny because Gorman does a lot of the same crap. They're not as blatant about it as IMG is, but IMG has to carry all the burden, which is kind of interesting to me.
I mean, we've run into guys from IMG that are involved, like, in the administration, and they are some cocky SOBs.
I swore for years that he was like some kind of bag man. I didn't realize that's who that was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, and that's it.
I remember him. He was making fun of what's his name, the quarterback.
Oh yeah, Tate Martell.
Yeah, he was making fun of Tate Martell.
Which
Well,
kind
I
of
can get
endeared me.
behind that. Yeah.
He kind of endeared himself.
I can
to
stand
me
up. I can get behind that kind of thing.
But then didn't Tate Martell just get his clock cleaned against Cedar Hill?
No. That was what I was just talking about. Gorman beat the crap out of Cedar Hill.
Yeah, they won.
But I mean, there was some ugly play. Maybe it was the quarterback for Cedar Hill.
I wouldn't doubt it because, I mean, Eddie was there 2 years ago at Cedar Hill when we had the Rivals camp out there, and a couple of Gorman guys came down. They had a big-time corner that actually OU was in on and some other guys.
They had a bunch of people at OU's camp this year.
And Cedar Hill and Gorman were just talking the whole time. Like, they couldn't wait for that game, and then, like I said, Gorman came out there and just beat them down.
Which is funny. It's kind of funny though, because I really respect that, like a Cedar Hill program that I think does it absolutely the right way. Yep. Obviously, everybody knows Joe McGuire.
Yep.
And then you have a school like Bishop Gorman that has, Snoop Dogg's kid flown in from Los Angeles.
Yep.
Another kid flown in from Florida. Mm-hmm. They were IMG before IMG, really.
Oh, yeah. Well, and the funny thing is
wasn't Ryan Reynolds from Arizona?
Yeah, he was from Lake Havasu.
Yeah.
And Gorman's been doing that stuff forever. And the funny thing is you can have the guy wrote the letter after the Cedar Hill game. Well, one of the few Cedar Hill guys that had a good game was Charleston Rambo, the OU eventual signee. Charleston Rambo was a move into Cedar Hill. Everybody gets these kind of ideas and they forget because Charleston moved in before his junior year, so it's somehow different. And you're like, no, he was a.
Anybody want to talk about Dax Garman for a minute? Texas.
Oh God, how many schools did he train?
He was like a five or six school guy, wasn't he?
Yeah. Oh, and
for 4 years of high school,
the fighting Jay Norvell's got a David Cornwell starting for him.
That's another.
That was the most ambiguous naming of a starting quarterback I've ever seen. Like, David Cornwell is our starting quarterback, but that doesn't mean he'll start the opener.
Yeah, it was but it will be a competition in camp or something.
But he has to win the job or something. I mean, it was
so. Was he a grad transfer?
No, he transferred out of Alabama.
Okay, so he's been there for a year. Yeah. Like he's eligible to play this year?
I thought he left Alabama before. No, that's it. I think he left Alabama before the college football playoff a year ago, maybe.
Okay.
Or maybe it was last year. So I don't know how he's immediately eligible.
That's what I was wondering is how that's going to work. But either way, he's
really good at that.
That announcement had such
he has the transfer locked down. He's like, I know everything you need to know about transfer. Don't worry about it.
Just wave.
Yeah.
Yeah, that and to kind of go into that, I mean, anybody that remembers that whole scenario and how that played out at Norman North and everything,
it was ugly.
Yeah, that announcement had a feeling of there's someone pushing this behind it, and I don't think they live in Nevada.
Yeah,
so that was. That felt a lot like the Norman North Jones thing.
There was so much air wasted on the argument of should OU have taken David Cornwell over Justice Hansen.
Actually, Justice Hansen's the only one that's done anything. So.
I was going to say it's funny how that story, like after a year or two, it was like, well, they should have taken Cornwell. He's going to compete for the Alabama job, and now Hansen's a Davy O'Brien. I mean, like he's not going to win it, but I mean, he had a decent year last year for Arkansas State.
He won some games.
Yeah,
kind of turned their season around.
Yeah,
I think they started like 1-5 or 1-6.
They were platooning him and some transfer from Cincinnati or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Not named
Gunnar Keel.
Gunnar Keel. Yeah,
he was a little short guy.
Gunnar Keel
might not be alive. Is he alive?
He furthers my belief that if you have a quarterback that literally can't talk to the media, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Like, those kind of guys, I don't know, like they're just basket cases for some reason. So now, not to say that guys talk to the media always work out.
I still remember that day during OU's camp when we were all camped out.
Oh, yeah.
Oriole Green Beckham walked in, and Gunnar Keel was just on campus, and God, those two guys. Did DGB catch on with another team?
I have not seen if he got
released.
I have not seen if he has. I was watching Canadian football last night, and Jackson Jeffcoat had an interception for Montreal.
Did he?
Did you know what Darius Bowman still plays in the CFL, former OSU receiver?
I think I did know that.
Saddest truth is I actually know Montreal's nickname. Anybody?
It's
You
like
may know from
the
just
Alouettes
because
or
I
something?
that's Alouettes. Yeah,
just because I saw it last night.
I fixate. I thought I was going to be on an island here, but now I'm with some savant.
That's a nickname you don't forget.
yeah.
Like,
It's I don't know what the hell it means, but
I couldn't even spell it. I just copy and pasted it into the thread that I.
okay, so coming up barbecue, you're gonna have commits mixed with others. Do you expect anyone to pop this weekend?
and we broke some of this down in the scoops. I don't want to go over all of it, but yeah, I picked about 6 guys that I thought were possibilities. I think the first one you start with is Brian Asamoah, the linebacker from Ohio. First trip to Norman. Has been very open that OU's really right there at the top of his list. He's visited places like Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. I know Arizona State's got some interest for him. So, I mean, he's a guy that seems pretty open, but you look down his offer list. I mean, and there's no – I mean, you can say Michigan, but I don't think Michigan's really involved with him at this point. Penn State is debatable. So what do you do with that? I mean, I think – at some point, he's just going to see that Oklahoma is clearly a stronger option, not just because of the program and what it is and where it is in college football's hierarchy, but their need at linebacker. I mean, we've talked about this almost every podcast for months. Who the hell are the linebackers going to be? You feel pretty good about Jalen Redmond if you want to consider him a linebacker, but even he's, kind of fringy. It's kind of depending on what they want to do. If they go 4-3, he's a defensive end.
Now, Jalen Redmond, I mean, that's going to be an interesting visit because you got the Ole Miss stuff that's just happened.
Yep.
And I think, nobody was dancing more than Mike Stoops, I don't think, when all that stuff went down because he knew Ole Miss. And now Arizona State is involved there.
Mm-hmm.
But will you be disappointed if they don't get a commitment because you thought that it should happen now that Ole Miss is out of it? Or do you think that Arizona State thing's real enough to where he wants to visit before?
Well, I mean,
he would pull a trigger.
And for those who might, be listening and don't really understand why he would have a specific interest in Arizona State, his teammate and buddy Evan Fields went out there last year, and God, if you go to Tempe, you're there's plenty to like out there. So, I think they do have some interest. I've heard Nebraska a lot. I know when he went up there for their spring game, he really enjoyed that and really has kind of been impressed with the way Nebraska handles him. They always recruit Oklahoma really well. So I think that's another school to keep an eye on. I just think, from everything I've gathered, his family is on Oklahoma's side. I know, we all know a guy that advises him a lot, and Jason Sexton, that was formerly Midwest City's DC. I get the impression Sexton is really big on OU. So I just think there's too many people telling him, even if Ole Miss wasn't the train wreck that it's clearly becoming, I still don't think he would have gone anywhere but Oklahoma because everyone's telling him this is the ideal situation. It fits your talents. You can grow a lot here. And it's always that same thing that a lot of guys like Sexton, in-state coaches, they understand. Oklahoma it matters to them that in-state kids do well at Oklahoma, or at least like their experience at Oklahoma, because that helps them recruit future guys from inside their own state.
Who's the last, I'm trying to think, the last dominant edge rusher from the state of Oklahoma to play at OU? I mean, it can't go back like Dan Cody far, can it?
Yeah. What's crazy is my first thought was freaking Rocky Bright.
Darrell, right?
Yeah, I was like, I don't even think he qualifies, but But you're right. I think Dan Cody would be your best option.
There just hasn't been a whole lot of guys as a whole to go to come out of Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, Larry Burdine had a moment there, but he never really could solidify himself consistently as a great player.
I mean, OU's best have been mainly from Texas.
Yeah. It's funny because if you look edge, you don't see it, but inside, I mean, you talk about guys like Gerald or Martin Chase, Dusty, I was going to start to say Dusty Loveless, but that one doesn't work. But yeah, I mean, there's been some solid interior defensive line, but on the edge,
Corey Klein.
Yeah, because you just don't have those twitchy guys. I mean, that's at end, man. You've got to be explosive, and Oklahoma's more about pluggers and got big, strong, kind of stout players, but not nearly as many of those guys that are 240 pounds running 4.6.
So is he? I mean, is he one of the best edge rushers that we've seen maybe in the last 20 years?
I think in the state, yeah. I mean, it's more about potential with him. Like it's people forget. I mean, it was such a big story when he first kind of emerged, but this guy didn't play football his first 2 years of high school and really hadn't played that much prior, I guess after his 8th grade year. So, I mean, this is just a guy that hadn't been around it. So last year, I know some people that talk about watching his junior tape and say, man, he's barely an FBS offer based on his junior tape. But then you see him up close and you see like the guy that he's growing into, and it's just unreal. I mean, the kind of potential he has.
Every time we've seen him, he's taken that next step, it feels like.
Yep.
And you hate to say sky's the limit because it's so cliche, but I mean, this guy, Jalen Redmond, could be an NFL guy one day if he just continues to take that next step every time.
I can flat out tell you, Eddie, it was after the Metro team camp, and I had gone home and I was just raving about him, and I was talking to a few coaches that I know, and one guy, recruits the state frequently, and we're talking. I said, man, he might be the number 2 guy in the state behind Bray. And he goes, screw that. He may be the best guy in the state. I mean, and that you're just like, wow.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's so similar to Bray because everybody knows that I think the world of Bray's potential, but he's never gotten there, in my opinion. Like, he still hasn't gotten to that top, which is both kind of scary as far as, oh, God, is he going to get there? But it's also scary in that he's this good already, and I don't think he's 70% of the guy he can be.
He is. I mean, Jalen Redmond at the Metro team camp was a one-man wrecking crew.
You guys came back
as far as
about him from there.
There was a couple times like he'd make kids cry. I mean, kids were scared of him to get hit by him.
Well, that picture I've run anywhere I could run it because it's probably my favorite picture I've ever taken with him kind of blowing through the line and he's about to kill that quarterback.
It's the only great picture you've ever taken.
I don't think I'd argue with you. And
well, you have a new camera. So.
And I just remember, I'll never forget. It's one of those things like you do this stuff for long and you kind of get numb to the things you hear. But Jeremy Dombeck, Mustang's head coach, who's trying to figure out his quarterback situation, sees Redmond break through the line. He can't take the guy to the ground, but he definitely could have popped him with his hands and given him, kind of let him know he was there. The kid pulls up, just kind of lets kind of bumps the quarterback. He starts walking back to the huddle. He goes, "Thanks a lot, 6." Like Dombeck couldn't have appreciated more.
You just saved the 2018 season,
exactly.
2017 season.
My quarterback's not dead on the ground. So it was, and it's. And I heard coaches sitting around talking about he looks like a grown man out here compared to everybody else. And it wasn't the best Metro team camp, so there's something to be said for, the big guy sitting next to all the short kids. I mean, there's something to that as well. But at the same time, you don't have to do this long to realize, looking at that kid is pretty special.
I just think it's kind of strange because I mean, just generally the world at large, Sooner fans, I don't think they really appreciate how good Redmond is and how much they really need him. Well, and I think it's just because he hasn't done a whole lot in the recruiting. I mean, he's had it narrowed down. There's not a lot of there's Ohio State's not in here and Texas isn't in here. So I mean, the Tatum thing blew up because he committed to Texas, but in the end, I think we all know that Jalen Redmond's the true jewel on the defensive line out of this class.
And for that matter too, I think he might get overlooked just a little bit too because he's a pretty quiet kid. He's not on social media a whole lot.
And he was there
it up with
at
kids.
Ron Tatum's announcement when he announced for Texas
wearing
OU stuff.
Yep.
Wearing a ton of OU gear. To this day, that will be outside of the Waraboko thing, which we've talked about before. The Ron Tatum commitment to Texas is still probably one of the weirdest situations I've ever been in.
It's had a very LeVar Ball feel to it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
somebody dominating decision making.
Not there for the kid.
Well, what's crazy, you look at kind of to go back to the Redmond stuff and how kind of overlooked he gets. What's more overlooked is look at what the state's produced for Oklahoma as far as defensive linemen in the last 2 years. You could get Redmond and Tatum, who are NFL caliber guys. I mean, with their, again, and this, you're talking about potential, what they could be. I don't know that that's where they'll go. But then you look at last year, Isaiah Thomas. I don't think there's any, there's all these pictures you see during the summer, of the guys hanging out. That picture of him when they were doing, it was some kind of charity work where they were working with somebody here in Norman, and there's about 10 or 12 guys kind of around a couple of
like
kids.
on a basketball court or something.
He looked huge. I mean, he didn't look at all like the guy expected. And I thought when he went down to San Antonio, I thought, okay, he's going to look like just a stick out there compared to these guys. But even then, you could see him starting to gain weight. And then you throw in Tyrese Lott, who there are some people that think he's as talented as any defensive lineman OU signed last year. I mean, there were a few people, kind of like we talked about, last week with Ricky DeBerry. There was some that really loved Ricky DeBerry and some that didn't think he was going to do anything. It's very mixed on Tyrese Lott. There's some that are really high on him and what he could be. So, you're talking about 4 guys there who I think all have a legitimate chance to at least make an impact for Oklahoma. So that's for the state. I wonder if that's ever happened in the last 30 years of Oklahoma recruiting. 4 defensive linemen in 2 years end up playing a role for OU's defensive line.
We just tried to come up with one just a minute ago and couldn't. So
exactly.
Okay, let me ask this last thing on the barbecue is give me one guy that might be kind of just coming in that, he's just coming to come and OU might, he's sort of interested in OU, but like that, give me that guy that they could make up the most ground with this weekend.
That's a good question because there's a couple guys I could go over. I think the first one I'm kind of going to think about this for a second, but the first guy that comes to my mind is Deshaun White, and I think that'll surprise people. But everybody I've talked to makes it sound very much like Oklahoma State and Texas A&M are way out in front for him, and I think that's largely based on they have made him a priority. While I feel like Oklahoma has always kind of
had him on the back burner.
Yeah, they've never really made him a priority. They were, I know, almost a month later than Oklahoma State, and I think over a month later than Texas A&M in offering him. And he came up a couple of times in the spring really hoping to get that scholarship offer, and it just didn't happen. So he's the first one that comes to mind. Another good option that's maybe a little more, I don't know if it's obvious or sexy or how you want to word that, but is Bobby Brown from Arlington. I've got him listed as Arlington Martin on our list, but that's not right. Arlington Lamar. He is a guy that I thought Oklahoma was a heavy lead for. I thought he almost committed a couple times in the spring. He's really tight with Calvin Thibodeau, but he's a guy that I think there was some stuff going on with him personally, and I think Wires got a little cross with him and OU, and he told people, "Oh, I'm not really talking to OU," and everybody I would talk to said everything's from our end is copacetic. It's right where we want it to be, and then I would talk to Bobby, and he kind of acted weird. Well, as I've kind of uncovered the story, and it's not something I want to go into publicly because it's just not anybody's business, but I think that is something that's been cured a little bit. He's supposed to be bringing like 6 of his buddies up to the barbecue. So I don't know how that's going to go. It's either going to be really good because he can have a good time with his friends at OU and everybody's going to hang out, or he's going to be kind of aloof and hanging out with his buddies. No, you can't really get any time with him. So I don't know how that's going to work, but he's a guy that OU really, really wants. And I think if they can get some time with him, get in his ear a little bit, and let Lincoln Riley sell him, I think OU could be in good shape.
Now, Josh, where can people find this list of recruits?
Well, we've got the July 29th barbecue visitor list on the Crimson Corner. Yeah, there we go. It's linked all over the front page. We've got all kinds of, direct links only to it. We started it, a couple of weeks ago now, and we just kind of keep updating it for those that aren't on the board or familiar with how we operate. We usually about 2 weeks out.
Real time, you hear something, you put it on the board.
And then, for those that don't understand it, it's all fluid. I mean, any of these guys that we're talking about could call me today and say, "Hey, Josh, I'm actually not going to make it," and the list changes. So, I mean, it's, people will say, "Oh, I got on there, or I saw it somewhere, and I kind of looked at the list." Yeah, this is just something, it's all going to change. Guys miss flights, guys, mom overslept, we couldn't get there, whatever it could be. There's 101 things.
Urban Meyer told me to pull my scholarship if
exactly. Urban Meyer told me to stay the hell out of the 405, so.
Things happen. People make plans to do other things.
Now, we're not reporting that that's what happened with Urban Meyer. We're just, we're joking around on the podcast.
No, I heard guys were involved.
Josh, I want to ask you about, it's kind of in the same tone as what Carey asked you, but how important is this visit for TJ Pledger? Because all the talk was, they just need to get him to the barbecue. Yep. That will settle everything. Mm-hmm. And now that he brings Noah Kane with him, what kind of impact will that have?
I think it's huge, and I think it's Oklahoma's chance to shut down. Like kind of just the same deal we're talking about with Josh Proctor and Jaden Woodby. It's a chance to shut all that down and say, TJ, if you're going to be recruiting for us, and we need you with us. We don't need you looking around too, but yet telling guys, hey, I'm here with OU, because we've talked about that forever, man. That's such a mixed message to those other recruits. Oh yeah, you love OU, do you? Well, when you go to Nebraska,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, that's going to confuse people, and it makes the situation weird. So I think it's a big chance for OU. They're going to lay out the red carpet. What I'm interested to see is how they do that with he and Noah. Do Noah and TJ pretty much take the tour together, or do they kind of split them up and let that, you know, kind of? Because I mean, you're gonna tell Noah, well, man, you and TJ, you're gonna be the man, and that's fine too. But it's every running back's got a little selfishness in them. Like they want to hear that I'm the freaking man, you know. So it'll be. I'm real interested to see how they handle that. And I don't think it's a big storyline or anything. I don't think it's going to be a make or break deal for either player. But that's the stuff that always interests me because I'm a recruiting geek and find stuff like that really appealing.
The one more question about a player, and then I have a
question hog.
Sorry,
No, I'm kidding.
Darrell Simpson.
Yeah,
That's another big name coming in. Offensive line obviously is in a really good situation with Bill Beatenbow, and you know the Ruben. Is it? How do you even say his last name?
I think it's Unije.
Unije. That was some very interesting news that Woody passed along today from IMG. Media Day. IMG has a media day, of course.
Yeah. Well, now with Darrell,
Texas coaches are offended.
Darrell, I think is,
but they're gonna talk shit about it until they have to back out of it.
Well, until they
need a player.
Well, yeah, until they can send their own media department to cover the media day.
Yeah,
then it's fine.
Yeah.
No, with Darrell, I think Oklahoma's in a great spot. I really had thought for a long time it was OU and A&M, but talking to some guys that I really know that are well plugged into the A&M market, A&M's not even there anymore. Like I don't think that's even a realistic option for him at this point in time. So I don't know, you know, like obviously TCU, he's in the area. That's an interesting one to follow, and there's some other places, but he just has such a long-standing relationship with OU. He fits Bill Beatenbow so perfectly because when other guys see these big kind of sloppy offensive linemen, like I don't know what Bill sees. You know, it's kind of like the Good Will Hunting, where he's talking about, like, you look at a piano and, you know, I see chopsticks, you know, but Beethoven, he saw, you know, the symphony. And that's kind of like, that's like, I'll see guys, I'm like, and I think I'm pretty good with offensive linemen, but Bill will see stuff and I'm like, I don't, you know, like he'll see a guy, I'm like, I'm not crazy about that guy. And then the dude's a player, you know, so it's just, I think he's bought into Darrell, and I think that, I don't think it'll happen this weekend. It's possible, but I do think before the start of the season, Darrell Simpson will be an OU commitment. But I don't think that's big news. The Ruben Unije stuff is crazy. I talked to Ruben back in the spring, and he was like, yeah, you know, I like OU, and TJ's always talking him up, and, you know, we'd kind of had some of those conversations, but he had never really gone that far with it. So for a bunch of his teammates that know him to be saying it's Oklahoma or Florida, and a lot of them picking Oklahoma, that's notable. And I mean, if, you know, everybody got kind of upset when OU lost Anthony McKinney, but if you can trade a good JUCO guy for a high-level high school guy, man, you'll take that trading day of the week, especially with OU having, you know, some young talent at tackle.
What's up with Florida right now? They just, but they are. It seems like almost like the sexy pick. Picked up Matt Corral over the past week.
I'm saying they haven't been sexy since McElwain got there.
Right.
So it is somebody's.
Well, that Shark disagrees.
It's Tim Tebow prayers is what it is.
Maybe it was the Shark.
The Shark got him.
Or it could be.
Did we talk? Could that have been more poorly handled by Jim McElwain? Like he had such a chance to roll with that and make it funny, and he made it like this awful, stupid thing.
Well, then
he was overly sensitive about it.
He was. That's exactly it.
Yeah. But I mean, Eddie, you talked about Matt Corral, the 5-star quarterback. Jamar Chase.
I think it was.
4-star from New Orleans. I mean, they've had a really nice run here. I'll tell you, the guy that I love is the Kyle Pitts kid, the tight end from Pennsylvania. They just got that was an early OU offer. He's a really good player. So, yeah, Florida's kind of got it rolling right now, and they just got Curtis Dunlap, Unije's teammate from IMG. So, I mean, if you're going to make me bet, and it's I'm not going to tell you that I'm really tied into the Ruben Unije thing because I'd kind of written that off, so I won't pretend that this is the best info out there. But if you made me pick, I'd bet Florida. But clearly Oklahoma's involved here. I think it's safe to say they'd get an official visit, and at that point, you know, stuff happens.
I think somebody in the SEC just kind of has to. I mean, with so much
cyclical every year, it's somebody else.
I mean, you've had so many changeovers at key programs.
It's been Tennessee the last couple years. We know they're a mediocre program, and now it's Florida. I mean, is that fair?
Yeah.
Well,
but I mean, you've got new coaches at LSU. You got a new coach at Georgia. Georgia didn't do that. It's just Ole Miss is in upheaval now, so they're not on that stage anymore, trying to go after the same type of kids. Arkansas is not really moving the needle. I mean, kids have to go somewhere.
Yeah, God, Tennessee's got 7 4-stars and 1 5-star, 2 4-star quarterbacks committed. What the hell has Tennessee done, particularly at quarterback, that would make you want to go play there?
Tennessee,
they have a shitty stadium too. They may have a lot of people that go in that thing, but I thought that place was crap.
It's Rust-Oleum.
I love
it. Really was like a really big.
It's Lewis Field on steroids.
It really is. It's like, and there's different. It's like a what do they call those, rat rods? Those cars that they purposely make look old.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it was like a rat rod of a stadium because it was like there was shit just melded with other shit to make a stadium. It wasn't like you go to OU or you go to Stillwater, or you go to TCU. I mean, it's
Florida
immaculate.
State even. Florida State was an awesome.
It's immaculate
stadium.
everywhere. Yeah, Florida State. Tennessee was literally like going to your crazy uncle's house that was a little bit of a hoarder.
Yeah. Maybe has a drinking problem.
Has a car parked in the front yard on the lawn.
Maybe banging a stepdaughter.
You're going...
that's too much.
By the way, I'll say this. I saw this too. I don't know why I'm ripping on Tennessee so much. It's all coming out.
But like bitches.
They're big. The walk thing.
Yeah.
Like... I mean, I'm yawning. It's like everybody up in the press box is like pressed up against the windows, like watching the walk, and I'm just like, I wanted to cuss really bad. They're freaking walking to the stadium. I mean, and you're woo, yay, you've got suits on.
Yeah, that thing is that's a weird.
That's a total SEC thing. Like OU's trying to do that too now.
Yeah, dropping them off in front of Headington or whatever.
Yep. And Schnellenberger had that stupid thing where they made them stay at that really shitty hotel, Sooner Hotel, and so they could walk to the stadium.
Oh, did they really?
Over there by Lloyd Noble, is that what you're talking about?
No, like over there by like the OCCE. Or I think all that stuff is gone now, or they're getting rid of it all now.
Just north of the Lloyd Noble.
Over by the just over. It was actually north
kind of between
the dorms.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
I didn't realize they did that.
Yeah, it was a disaster.
Well, God, Eddie, you were like 10.
Yeah, we used to park around there when I came to games with my parents.
But yeah, I don't know why I got off on a Tennessee rant, but I don't know what their locker rooms and stuff are like. I mean, I'm sure they're nice, but here's the other thing too. Like Texas is like throwing all their pictures of their locker rooms up, and it's not, other than just having TVs with lockers, they're not really changing anything. You still have a bunch of square, rooms with lockers in them that look like they haven't been updated since the 90s.
I told you the one of the best comments I saw about the new lockers down in Austin is somebody said it looked like the frozen foods aisle at H-E-B.
It really did.
And if you go look at the picture, it really does.
Well, you compare what they did with OU, and maybe it's because I'm in the world of just finishing remodeling a bathroom. But you know the stuff you always see, the rebath? Mm-hmm. Like they just like put a little casing over the old shower. That's what it looks like. They just kind of like glossed over the top of it. Now it looks great and new, but it's crap. You know it is.
It's surprising. We've talked about it many times, but it's surprising how far Texas fell behind. When you look at look at Oklahoma State, what they did. Look at OU. Everybody did.
The only people that were built, like Kansas State is, that's a totally different stadium than it was when we first started covering the team. I mean, first they did the
huge video
the other
board
side,
now.
and then they did a whole new press box, and I mean Baylor Stadium's really nice. Although you can tell they built it on the cheap, like
Baylor Stadium.
It looks nice though. And TCU's, their facilities are phenomenal.
I love TCU Stadium. It's kind of smallish, but it's very homey.
People have a lot of hatred for Texas Tech, and understandably, when you're chanting "F.U. Baker," their fans are insane and mean-spirited and just jerks. But their facilities, they were one of the first ones, like right along with Oklahoma State, to really redo their press box side. So that's been, and now I haven't seen their new stuff, but now they've got both sides done, and now they got a new training, that thing that caught on fire for a while.
Yeah, Texas Tech has the nicest. Well, I'd say Tech or K-State have the nicest press boxes in the league, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Missouri had a really good one when they were in the league.
Well, that makes sense, all their journalism stuff.
That you always hear about.
Yes, yeah.
No one's going to school there
Okay,
anymore.
so I know we weren't going to go too long because Josh has got to get out of here, but
7-hour drive with a pregnant wife.
I had one more question about the the barbecue.
Questions. Yes.
Is Lincoln, what kind of fingerprint will Lincoln Riley put on this thing? Because I do agree with a lot of people on the board that, I
think
next
Bob was
year,
the one that came up with playing softball last year?
Yeah, no. Well, maybe.
Water balloon fight was all Bob.
Yeah. I just think that in the coming years for the barbecue, they're going to either change, they're going to make it more sexy. It's going to be an event that you don't see kids missing out on.
Yep.
Well, if you're smart, you don't even go outside. You just do all kinds of events in the new indoor. Like you have a freaking pool party in the hydrotherapy area or something.
You could have strippers come, but that would be probably a little over.
You would do.
Yeah. A little cocaine buffet on the side.
BFJ. So, no, to answer the question, I mean, Lincoln, I think there's so many ways they can do it. And I think, to Oklahoma's credit, they're trying not to just steal ideas. Like, they want to be original with the things they're doing.
Yeah.
Because I've always talked about Friday Night Lights, and I think there's a lot of people that think that could be a great idea. But how do you make it your own into where it's not just a rip-off of Urban Meyer when they were doing that at Florida, or the Rising Stars at USC that was even before that? So, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can go with that. But Oklahoma's got to find out something to make it attractive for guys outside of their own region to come. Like, when Nebraska did theirs, and they had like 8,000 fans show up to their Friday Night Lights thing, and you had TJ Pledger show up, Bradley Hiles show up. I mean, they had guys from California, Florida, really all over the country came in for that thing. And you need something like that because just a junior day, man, freaking everybody does those.
Yeah,
like
you're not going to attract.
You'll get your local and regional guys, sure, but no kid, like no 5-stars coming in from Seattle to come check out, a junior day it's going to be basically the same thing they'll see at every other school.
If you really wanted to copy Urban Meyer, you could just not talk to your family for 3 months.
Hot takes.
Okay. All right. So we're running out of time here. We're not going to do another hour and 45-minute podcast. I did want to kind of hit on some of what we talked to the coaches about at the golf outing. And, it was the first time we had a chance to talk to Ruffin McNeil. He's a very sweaty man. It was very hot, though.
It was so hot.
It was so hot. I mean, the first guy we talked to was Kerry Cooks, and I know it kind of, people mentioned this on the board. He came out and said that, they're being supportive of Will Sunderland and trying to encourage him to stay in class, depending on what happens or whatever. He's just trying to be, I mean, they're trying to paint the turd. I mean, they know that there's almost zero chance he's going to be on the team moving forward. So, it's just a guy that probably feels bad for his family that they're going through this, and really feels bad for Will because we've talked about this a bunch. It's probably going to be the most bizarre incident that's ever happened in modern days at OU. That kid stole stuff and then tried to sell it. I mean, it's just, it doesn't make any sense to anybody that knows him at all.
Talk about, the Mixon situation being out of character. This was like out of character times 2 trillion.
Yeah, because we didn't really... I mean, Joe was from California.
Yeah.
I think I was the only one that ever had talked to him face-to-face before. I don't know.
Well, I was up there with you.
US, but you guys talked to him at the Army game.
Yep. I was up at Soldier Field,
you sort of talked to him.
We talked to him as he did interview, as he signed autographs.
Yeah.
Should have been a big clue.
The only time I've ever done an interview like in a crouch.
Yeah.
Like I was crouched down next to him so the kids could get to him. And I'm like holding the mic in his face and Eddie's shooting from across the table. That was the most awkward damn interview I've ever done.
Yeah, you got to get your interviews before the game at that thing. Just so stupid. Those kids.
They're kids and their autographs.
I was really looking forward to going up to
kids.
Cincinnati and interviewing his mentor, Pac-Man Jones, but he'll be suspended for the first week. during while we're up there, because I think the Bengals open the day after Ohio State.
Okay, so back to, and by the way, like Jay Boulware, I thought it was really interesting. Basically, gave a no comment on who, Eddie?
I don't know.
Who hasn't been there this summer?
Oh, Austin Seibert.
Okay. Well, you said Seibert. I was hoping for a Seibert.
I'm getting better. When he leaves the team, I finally get it done. That probably means he'll never come back.
But just giving a no comment, I thought that was interesting, which means he's in the shithouse.
That means that Seibert must have done this all on his own. This was not something that was cleared by the coaches. Hey, I'm going to take the summer off. This was I'm going home.
Yeah, screw you guys.
Yeah, very weird. And it'll be very interesting to see, if Seibert, and I assume that Robinson's back on campus this week. Everybody reports by Sunday with practice starting Monday.
Yeah.
Those are two names that I will be interested come Monday to see, what their status is.
By the way, I'm going to throw this out there too. Like, they will start practicing on Monday. Our first media will be on Thursday. But don't freak out and don't listen to a bunch of reports about this guy's looking like they don't wear pads for the first 3 days of practice.
Oh, God. We are at that time of the year, isn't it?
What happened at practice today, because it's all going to be... I mean, it is surprising to me. Like, they'll get out there first day of practice, and there's no, like, walkthrough period. They're, like, out there running plays. Yeah. So they do stuff. But, the NCAA rules this year, there are no two-a-days. They get extra time of practice. That's why they're starting. Usually they don't start practice until like August 4th or 5th. So they practice a little bit earlier, and they get another week without the two-a-days. And they only had 4 or 5 two-a-days. Tim Kish was talking about this. So it's really not going to affect them. And I think when they had two-a-days, they couldn't wear full pads on both practices. I think one had to be uppers only or something like that. Or maybe it was just helmets only. So... what I'm trying to say is don't freak out because they're going to have 3 practices and you haven't heard any information about who's standing out because it's non-pad. So there's my public service announcement. But, other than that, I mean, just talking to the coaches, I know, Eddie, you spent time with Tim Kish, and the Kenneth Murray thing was kind of confusing a little bit. I think after talking to Mike about it, it kind of pieced together. But I didn't really get the feeling talking to Mike like he really excelled at middle linebacker. Because remember, they had the spring game, and he had only been moved the week before the spring game. So it was the first time he was playing middle linebacker. And I know there's one series of photos that we have where he's just getting absolutely destroyed by Creed Humphrey.
Yeah.
I think you had the video of it, too.
That was on a Marcellus Sutton touchdown, I think.
Yeah, and I just didn't really get the feeling like they felt like, oh, yeah, he's definitely a middle linebacker. They're going to start him out as a middle linebacker, playing the Mike linebacker with John Michael Terry. But I think they want John Michael Terry to really step up early here in fall camp and take that job.
I think it's bad news if you're starting a true freshman at middle linebacker. That's just me. And that's not to say that Kenneth Murray can't do it, because I absolutely think that one day he can be that guy. But you want a redshirt freshman, redshirt sophomore starting over a freshman. That's just me.
And I'll say this: Josh McCuistion kind of called his shot last week, but a lot of positive talk about Addison Gums making an impact this year.
Yeah, you guys would know it better than I do. Guys with that kind of length and burst off the edge, I mean, they're going to find a way onto the football field because, like we've talked about, I think Oklahoma will be okay inside. Neville Gallimore, Matt Romar, I mean, you've got some bodies in there that you both know you can trust and that are talented guys.
If they're healthy.
Yeah. But on the edge, what do you have? I mean, what do you have that you can trust? I mean,
you got Obo.
Yeah. I mean, and that's a guy that if they're going into a 4-3, he's playing a position that he neither played in high school nor has he played it at Oklahoma. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not that different. I think he can handle it. But there's going to be some adjustment period. And so you need other guys to step up and can give him a break sometimes. And Gums, I mean, you're talking about a big guy like we talked about earlier, big guy off the edge that can run. Those guys are hard to find.
It's going to be interesting. Mark Jackson gets kind of lost in the mix.
Yeah, and I was surprised that they said that, I can't remember if it was Mike or Tibbs or who said this, but like they said they're still looking for a backup to Caleb Kelly, and I thought that would have been Mark Jackson.
Yeah.
But it doesn't sound like he's there yet. Either that or they're just trying to push him a little bit.
And it also goes back into kind of what I put on the board just about the Lampkin situation. Just because guys aren't talked about doesn't mean they're not going to contribute at some point.
Yep. Well, he has to. I mean, I don't know how productive he'll be, but he has to get snaps.
Yeah.
Because, I'll say this is one underrated aspect of the defense is that I think Neville Gallimore could be a really good pass rusher.
Yeah.
Playing, inside, but still getting pressure on the quarterback.
Yeah, as a 3, I mean, he's a really athletic 3, so that he could absolutely be, in that scheme they were playing last year, even if he wasn't farther outside and then, instantly becoming less athletic, that scheme wasn't really created for him to create pressure. That wasn't really the idea. But with this, I mean, you go back through the years, OU's best defenses, Tommy Harris, Gerald McCoy, I mean, you had guys who could get to the quarterback from inside, and it changed the whole game. So they need him to be really good.
The one thing about this defense, and I don't know that they'll be ready for Ohio State, but, I mean, just watching them in the spring, I mean, you see guys like Caleb Kelly. You see guys like Obo wasn't even out there, but Addison Gums, Mark Jackson, John Michael Terry. They are longer and more athletic than maybe I've ever seen this defense. I mean, it's remarkable the type of athletes that they brought in the last couple of years.
Just another thing that I'll add too, just going back through like old game tape video from last season, is at the end of the year there was a very, I guess, look at the tackle stats and stuff like that, and it might say differently, but just from my video and stuff, it looked like repeatedly it was Caleb Kelly, it was Obo Okoronkwo, it was Stephen Parker, those guys making a lot of plays at the end of the year, and they're all back, so they should take another level, or I guess another step up and just being better. You can't be worse than they were the first 6 games.
Yeah, and you really don't lose much on the defensive line, so
just got to fill a hole for Jordan Evans.
Yeah, which is a big.
That's a huge deal.
By the way, also talking to Kerry Cooks, I really get the feeling that they are all aboard the Will Johnson train to replace Will Sunderland. Like, I think they're intrigued by Robert Barnes, and said that he doesn't look like a guy that even suffered an injury last year. But there's no way you're getting a true freshman ready for that position, in my mind.
It's tough, and especially in this league with as much stuff that offenses do to confuse a safety, I would have to think that there's a major learning curve there. It helps he comes from a really good program, though, and it's not surprising that he's quote-unquote ready.
And, he mentioned this, and it is true. 2 years ago, Will Johnson was really good as a safety.
Yeah.
As a nickel playing up on the line of scrimmage.
Bad news.
And he said it. He said he had concussion problems because we made mistakes trying to play him up on the line, which is kind of ballsy to say. It's maybe with this crew, our Crimson Corner crew, honesty is never lie all the time. That's my advice to you. Okay, that's going to do it for this edition of the Unofficial 40 podcast. I really enjoyed having Josh in studio. Thanks to Eddie as well. But we are out of time, so we're going to end it a little bit earlier than normal. Josh has got to get back on the road with the pregnant wife and the kid. So thanks all for listening. Go check us out at Soonerscoop.com. If you're not already a member, just remember the stuff we talk about in the podcast, just brushing over. There's 10 times more information available on the Crimson Corner, especially tidbits from practices. And obviously the Sooner Scoop breaking down all the visitors for the big barbecue this weekend. And plus, we'll be updating you constantly throughout the weekend on what's going on with the barbecue. So go to Soonerscoop.com, $9.99 a month or $100 for the entire year. You will not regret being a part of the site, especially now with fall camp getting underway, with recruiting hitting the hot and heavy stages, official visits, all that stuff. So thanks again for listening to the Unofficial 40. We'll see you next time right back here on Soonerscoop.com podcasts.